are these people?
I got another story for this evening.
We
Is it?
purposely kind of did the last stories a little shorter so that we could probably spend more time on this one.
Yeah,
And
it's a little long.
I'll say shout out to Reef for this because I actually did want to talk about Black August like a couple of weeks ago, but I chose that over another story. But then, we found this, and
Yeah.
I think it's very poignant given, Crab, I'm sure you're going to talk about this a little bit, but you're going to Camp Dada over the weekend. I think this actually might be kind of a cool thing maybe you guys can talk about while you're there.
Yeah.
But Reef, you want to share?
Yes, sir. So this is by Ed Rampell over at Covert Action Mag. So Mood of Militancy movies star at Black August Film Festival in Pasadena. So you'll see a lot of these films go around this like Black Power circuit of film festivals, which I think is actually pretty neat. But they're quoting George L. Jackson there. Patience has its limits. Take it too far, and it's cowardice, which is a great quote in my opinion. So if you go to blackaugustfilmfestival.com, you will find more information on like who won things and stuff like that. So we'll get into a few that Ed Rampell showcased, but he starts out with what is Black August and the film fest named after it. So the inaugural Black August Film Festival, zooming in on what Frantz Fanon called the rest of the earth and their opposition to systemic racism, took place in Pasadena, California, August 13th through 14th. Right? So unlike other black-themed film fests that may screen socially conscious indies alongside the typical mindless entertainment of Hollywood studio features with African-American talent, BAFF has a narrower, more politicized focus. So according to its website, the Black August Film Festival will welcome films from all over the world and the social and economic issues of the oppressed. Black August is an invitation to reflect on the history of Black freedom struggle, to celebrate those who have come and gone before us, and to commit to continue this fight for justice and liberation until we win. Right? And they give you that website right there. So BAFF is presented by the Pasadena African American Film Foundation, which teaches filmmaking to teens and supports local filmmakers. So during a screening discussion, filmmaker James Farr, BAF's co-director, explained the meaning and origin of the name of the fest, which is redolent with historical significance in the struggle against white domination, which culminated in the month of August. There is a through line of resistance. Farr, who appeared in and co-made some of the festival's documentaries, cited the example of the legendary Jonathan and George Jackson of the Soledad Brother fame, or notoriety depending on your politics. Both carried out the radical acts of defiance and perished in the month of August. So, any thoughts so far, Collin, just on Black August alone, which I'm sure you have some?
Yeah, I think I never kind of realized this, but like a lot of revolutionary, movements, or actions that Black people have taken, not just in this country, but I think throughout the diaspora, have taken place in the month of August. I never even made that connection. So the fact that they were able to, I think is very cool. That they did that, in Barbados, where my dad's side of the family is from. Emancipation Day, for them actually took place a couple of weeks ago, like in August. So this is not just limited to stuff, within, you might think of just in America. This is kind of what you can see, throughout the African diaspora, which I love, because it's more inclusive in terms of like thinking in terms of like, it's not just a thing that's associated within America, but throughout the world, and like Black people throughout the world have done these acts of resistance, you can say any time of the year, but I think you could see a lot of these actions predominantly taking place in that month. So I think rightly named and a very historical significance in terms of a global focus instead of just a national focus that I think people tend to think in terms to here.
Yeah.
And I really love this because and they even mentioned how Hollywood itself is like an embodiment of racism. They throughout time they've always. I mean, they do pose themselves as like these quote unquote like progressive, uh, anti-racist institutions, but they have a huge history of whitewashing movies, especially with like um, mostly like like pronounced actors.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to side like I'm trying to like take myself here because like I'm not trying to side with like SJW type shit where it's like every single role has to be demanded by racial conformity. But it would just be nice to see some new faces around, not just like a couple of like a handful of elites that dominate the entire industry. Like if you watch, on Netflix, there's a show, Narcos, and it's a bunch of like extremely talented Hispanic actors that you'll never see on anywhere else.
Yeah.
But Hollywood is addicted to the white male, like bland, like charm.
Yeah.
They love it. That's why they're in everything.
Yep. Plus, you know, the amount of steroids that they can buy.
I know. It's like I said, I don't think every single role has to like abide by those situations, but you can get other people. There's other roles. It's nice to see a little something different once in a while.
So here's one of those new faces.
Go ahead, go.
Well, James Farr here, which is who they were talking about a second ago, right? You know, so BAF website goes on to say that the month of August is also rich with the history of black resistance outside from the Haitian Revolution, which began August 22, 1791, to the Watts Rebellion. The civil unrest in Los Angeles took place August 11th, 1965, and the Ferguson Uprising, which began August 10th, 2014, the day after Michael Brown's fatal shooting in Missouri. Black August is a reminder of the power in unity and a mandate to continue the joint struggle. In addition, America's bloodiest slave revolt, led by Nat Turner, began on August 21st, 1831 in Virginia. The iconic March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., occurred on August 28th, 1963 in the nation's capital. And this book kind of like talks about it. I'll put the Amazon link for this book in chat. If people want to find that, there's probably PDFs online if you searched hard enough as well, but you know.
Or you know what? If you want to avoid Amazon, I'll
your library can get it.
Even the library. I know a couple of the local black bookstores in DC. I'll check to see if they have it right now. But support them. You know, try not to get them from Amazon if you can help it.
If you can help it.
If they do have it, I will link those as well.
Okay. So Farr pointed out that the city where BAF was held also played a noteworthy role in the Black freedom struggle. He noted that Jonathan Jackson was raised in Pasadena and is where Michael Zinzun, the subject of one of the documentaries screened at the festival, also lived. I would add that the man who broke Major League Baseball's color barrier, Jackie Robinson, was also from Pasadena. For what it's worth, the fictional Caucasian protagonist of the 1967 youth culture hit The Graduate, starring Dustin Hoffman, was from Pasadena too. The Black August Film Festival screened a total of 20 plus productions, including fiction and nonfiction, shorts, feature-length movies, animation, multimedia, and more works. Most of the screenings took place in two of the theatrical spaces at Boston Court, a well-appointed performing arts center in Pasadena, where I previously reviewed live stage productions, which he puts these websites here. I tried the trailer one, and the link did not work. But the author starts here with the Zin of Zinzun. So the biopic Zinzun, a revolutionary activist, directed by PAAFF executive director Dennis Haywood and co-produced by Farr, is also Pasadena's noted campaigner Michael Zinzun. This 52-minute nonfiction film is a PAAFF project that also encapsulates the stirring saga of Jonathan and George Jackson. Do either of you remember this story? You'll recognize the picture probably in a minute. But so Zinzun, a revolutionary activist. Here's a little movie poster there. The is cut off, but forward ever, backwards never. All power to the people. Michael Zinzun. His little quote there from him. So, in a desperate attempt to liberate his older sibling, and the other Soledad brothers, apparently acting in league with Black Panther defendants, 17-year-old Jonathan staged a daring attack on the Marin County Courthouse, seizing a judge, deputy district attorney, and jurors on August 7th, 1970. Jonathan Jackson, 17, leading attack on Marin County Courthouse in an attempt to free his brother George. So he essentially rounded up a posse and went and got some people, is what it sounds like. Yeah. So real G there. The hostage taking ended in a bloodbath, and his guns Jonathan used were registered to none other than Angela Davis. The activist academic went underground as she was subjected to one of the most intensive manhunts in FBI history. Davis was eventually acquitted on August 21st, 1971. George Jackson, who was a field marshal of the Black Panther Party, was shot dead during a bold escape attempt at San Quentin Prison. So, according to Zinzun, the movie, it was against the crucible of radical violence that 21-year-old Michael Zinzun joined the Black Panthers in the early 1970s. However, critical of the BP, the Black Panther Party's cult of personality, the Pasadena resident left the militant organization after 2 years. Undaunted, Zinzun pursued activism, co-founding the Coalition Against Police Abuse and devoting much of his organizing against law enforcement's excessive use of force, including advocating for a civilian review board to monitor police brutality. In the process, Zinzun lost an eye in an altercation with Pasadena police, which explains why he was often seen wearing an eye patch. There he is, right there with his eye patch. I like his little defense committee back there. And indictment of police, immediate suspension, independent investigation, and police accountability. Pretty good start there. Thoughts so far on that?
Sounds familiar.
Yep.
Sounds like what we want as far as defunding the police.
Right.
But
for this entire time.
Right. But I think, I think this just kind of shows how little we know about, well, one, this is kind of history that people are not going to talk about because you don't want to have a national uprising. But it just also kind of shows that the stuff that we're kind of talking about, and we're kind of talking about it as if it's a new idea, really isn't. Like
history gets frequently erased too. I mean,
right. That's what
there's a history curriculum for a reason.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. But I think especially within Black culture, there's a lot of nuggets, within our culture that if more people knew about it, is like world changing. Which is why I think in a lot of ways, the idea of teaching Black history, I think, at least to this degree, is never going to be taught. And, unless you have people like my dad, who is very much a student of history and studies it and lives it out and is able to communicate that, to people. If we don't have people necessarily teaching us that, then it is going to be lost and people are not going to be aware of it. But then, as I said, these are the kind of things that people should know as far as helping us to organize properly. Because the key is you got to know what's being done before in order to figure out how can you remix it in certain cases in order to apply for what it means today. I think we try too much, especially when we organize, to reinvent the wheel or try to come up with something new, when many times if we look at the history, we don't necessarily have to, So I think, again, it just kind of proves the idea of defunding the police, not new.
No.
But I think we think it's new due to the lack of knowing something like this. And I think, the idea, like, even with this festival, you didn't hear mainstream media talking about this.
Mm-mm.
They're not going to talk about it because, it kind of fits within the narrative of kind of keeping everyone, I would say, more or less asleep,
Yeah.
in terms of like stories like this and historical people like this that really fought for change. And if you have enough people who are aware of this, that can mean trouble for the establishment.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So we continue. We got tip on Rockfin. Oz, are you trying to spoil us again? You
Who is
know,
this?
Oz from Roar Media. Nice, nicey Oz. Love you,
thanks,
bud.
Oz.
You're too sweet.
You
You're
know,
sweetie pie.
too sweet, too sweet.
Too sweet.
So anyway, we got so Zinsun went on to become a media figure presenting the cable access TV program Message to the Grassroots. He also ran for office, seeking to be elected to the state assembly on the Peace and Freedom Party ticket, and sought a seat on the Pasadena City Council. But his unsuccessful campaign was dodged by allegations from the LEPD, and others that Zinsun was the subject of investigations by LEPD's anti-terrorism division. Zinsun
Of course, they called them terrorists, like everything else.
Very similar to Tara Reid spoke recently with the APSP, the African People's Socialist Party, Uhuru movement individual who was also raided by the FBI not that long ago.
Black Panthers were like on the eye of the FBI for like years.
Yeah.
They killed Tupac and they made the Bloods and Crips fight each other for however long.
Yeah.
It's to establish division and to not have any sort of unity within.
Yeah. So, as Zinsun went to become a media figure presenting the cable access TV program Message to the Grassroots, he also ran for office. He can be elected to the state assembly on the Peace and Freedom part. We read this, right? As an internationalist, Zinsun also traveled to Brazil and Namibia, where he supported the Southwest African People's Organization, SWAPO, which had a guerrilla wing in its independent struggle against South Africa's apartheid regime. I learned a lot from Zinsun, which is a highly educational documentary about an important leader. So I'm down for watching that movie. I don't know about you, Colin. We'll find that and watch that.
How do you watch?
I think if you go to that website, which I will put in the chat, yeah, it's what is it? The blackaugustfilmfestival.com, right? Yeah. You should be able to find ways to watch all those there. I think a few of them are like not even released yet, technically, to continue a little bit with our next film this evening. So check it out. Not all of Black August Film Festival's productions were nonfiction, and my favorite movie at the fest was writer-director Frederick Hawthorne's Checks X Balances. With its tantalizing premise, this is one of these shorts that begs to have the budget to turn it into a feature-length motion picture. Although part of the short has the veneer of a news-type program, which actually clips of Malcolm X and other actual historic personages, and Kathleen Bradley portraying a fictional TV talk show host named Serena Knowles, must be Beyonce's cousin. Checks X Balances is actually a scripted narrative production with actors playing roles. Roles, Colin. So there's that cover, which I think is pretty fucking dope, honestly.
Yeah.
But what does her shirt say? I can't read it. So on screen, Serena interviews an attractive, distinguished married couple, Xavier and Ebony Jones, who is played by Jerome Roe Brooks and Jasmine Hester, who are introduced as experts on Malcolm X. But the Joneses are more than mere academics or authors. The Joneses are vigilantes who secretly have a desire to attain justice for aggravated African Americans. By whatever means necessary. They are enraged that, as a line of dialogue puts it, Time after time, we see killers go free. With Xavier wearing a sweatshirt emblazoned with the word reparations, the trigger-happy Joneses embark on a killing spree of reprisals against figures such as George Zimmerman, who shot Trayvon Martin, and one of the police officers who raided Breonna Taylor's Louisville, Kentucky home with a no-knock warrant, resulting in the 26-year-old's untimely death in 2020. Hawthorne's 2022 movie was shot before officers involved in the raid were charged by the Justice Department in August 2022 with falsifying a search warrant and more. The militant couple also confront the old white woman who in her youth had claimed Emmett Till harassed her. Denouncing Carolyn Bryant as the first Karen, checks X balances was presumably made before June 2022 when an unserved arrest warrant for Bryant was discovered and the district attorney and the grand jury declined to press charges against the woman whose false claims is believed to cause 14-year-old Till's 1955 torture and death, which was clarion call triggering the civil rights movement, but the failure of law enforcement to hold Bryant accountable leads credences to the Joneses' contention that retribution must be served vigilante style by revolutionaries in racist America. First time I learned about Emmett Till was Dave Chappelle, who called Emmett Till's mother like the most badass woman of all time for like making that an open casket. Like that's, oh, you know, she wanted motherfuckers to look at that shit. Anyway, so Hawthorne's gripping short ends with Sam Cooke singing the civil rights anthem, "A Change Is Gonna Come." The cheeky checks X balances is in the tradition of Melvin Van Peebles' early 1970s trendsetters Watermelon Man and Sweetback's Badass song, and is provocative independent filmmaking that I believed epitomized the Black August Film Festival's purpose. More than any other single film, it lived up to the festival's subtitle, The Mood of Militancy. Checks X balances boldly poses the proposition that to attain justice in racist America, radicals must take the law into their own hands and pursue direct action by any means necessary. As right-wing violence dominates the news, Hawthorne contemplates an ultra-left version of vengeance and reckoning. Bravo to Hawthorne, who cut his cinematic teeth as an intern on Spike Lee's 1992 Malcolm X. So, bravo for that one. I want to see that shit. That sounds dope.
But again, like the line in the article, radicals must take the law into their own hands. And pursue direct action.
Yeah.
In their own hands and pursue direct action by any means necessary. Like,
again, I mean, we're not telling you this is a fictional story, but
but it's based on, I think, the idea of like, if you had the balls, basically, to go after the people who essentially killed Black people unnecessarily, would you?
Yeah.
And given the idea that our justice system isn't going to do shit about it,
right?
Would you take that on yourself?
Yeah.
And I think the idea is like, when the system fails you, you have to be the one to take matters into your own hands. Now, I'm not saying, and I will say this, I will never say personally to go out and shoot people up or whatever else and like break shit or whatever else. But at the same time, I'm like, if you do it, you know, like, I'm not going to be one to stop you to do it, because especially given if the powers that be is aware of the problem and they're not doing shit about it, you know?
Yeah.
You know, as MLK said, those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make a violent revolution inevitable. So the idea is like, if you're not going to do anything about it, we are going to do something about it to get your attention, essentially. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a fictional premise, but I think it's based on the true idea of, I'm sure, how many of us have felt, and like wanting to take matters in our own hands, but not necessarily feeling that we have the power to. So,
nice. I like the writer with that, kind of just like making kind of like entertaining like a proposed fantasy where like in like a perfect world we could take action in this way.
You ever watch?
Almost
Did you ever watch the
like
Boondock Saints?
Yes.
That's what it reminds me of right off the bat. I mean, it's a little like, you know, I mean, I hope it goes the anti-hero route of like, you know, making these people willing to like go take a shotgun down Rodeo, you know? So, but yeah, I mean that I'm down for that film. I hope it gets made into, you know, a full feature. They should do like a GoFundMe and see if they can get funding for it there, you know? But anyway, you know, I'm sure Rome would go watch that with us, I imagine. You know, but we move on to our next film of the Black August Film Festival. So, Final Cut, another thought-provoking short, and Michael Hinsley's Uncut, a meditation on the coming of fascism to America when the so-called New Republic Patriot Party comes to power, and like latter-day versions of the SS Dr. Joseph Mengele, the Nazi angel of death who practiced inhumane scientific experiments on prisoners at Auschwitz, imposed forced sterilization on all males 35 and older in order to reduce the number of child defects, and the like of the part of the conservatives' quest for racial superiority. Interesting he went with the male sterilization.
Right. Whereas in the past, it was more like
Female.
we talked about eugenics, it was primarily female.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the film cleverly spins the dynamic currently playing out in a variety of so-called red states where MAGA-dominated governments are denying females basic reproductive rights, but unlike abortion, Uncut shrewdly places the onus on the male of the species in this topsy-turvy Handmaid's Tale in this role reversal of gender politics, although the New Republic Patriot Party is patriarchal male-dominated. In addition, the cast is mostly, if not all Caucasian, dramatizing how rank-and-file whites, too, are imperiled by incipient totalitarianism. So there's that film poster there. So I like the little play on words on the Uncut. You know?
Yeah.
But the film stresses the Reichian observation in the state dominates reproduction and sexuality, it controls the person. The short plot centers on Jamie, a runner, a male nearing his 35th birthday, and thus the age for state mandated obligatory vasectomy, and who wants to flee across the border to Canada and is clandestinely helped by a contemporary version of the Underground Railroad to escape to freedom and safety. Is that like the Tunnel of Love? Like, is that what it would be? I'm just guessing.
I mean, you could, yeah.
Sure. You know, like the runner's main there's also train jokes in there, but the runner's main rescuer is an attorney named Lenny, whose grandparents had been shipped to concentration camps during World War II. Hinsley shot the low-budget Uncut largely in close-up, and its taut, terrifying premise enhances a sense of apprehension and dread despite the lack of sophisticated Hollywood studio production values. Hinley attached the BAFF screening, saying that after growing up in Europe, returning to America was the biggest disappointment in my life. Like Checks and Balances, Hinsley's Uncut is a short that demands a budget in order to become a full-length feature film.
Rob, you sound like you have a connection to that.
I have some resentment with my parents who did exactly that.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Moved to America, right?
Growing up in Europe and then coming to America to have kids wasn't the best idea, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, as a you know, you lived in you know UK for a while, Colin. How do you feel about it? You know,
well, not so much living in the UK because I was a kid, so I didn't know any better. But like when I lived in Uganda, when I was 30. I lived there for 5 months, and then came back, and I think that was basically the beginning of my political revolution. Although I don't think it really kind of fully realized itself until shortly after the 2016 elections, but at least the seeds were planted. But like I came back to this country and remember being like, this country is shit.
Yeah.
Like, I basically hated this country for over a year. after coming back, because it was just kind of like, now granted, there was a lot of poverty. I don't want to say a lot, but I think in terms of like certain things, just as far as humanity and human rights, Uganda in a lot of ways is much better at it than even here.
Yeah.
And I think just kind of making that comparison is just really like, America is like the best at everything. And coming back, it was just kind of like, like, I think one, just the idea of just being submersed in this culture, I think in a lot of ways it's very dangerous, because if you, not dangerous, but like, if you don't know any better, if you don't know anything outside of America, then you're going to think of certain view of America that may not necessarily be correct.
Yeah.
But like having to leave for a while and then being in the bush in Uganda for like 5 months and then coming back, it was just kind of like the dichotomy of both cultures. But I think more specifically the idea of me living here and realize how really shit this country is, it just made me like resent.
It's mostly like our hyper consumerist culture where everyone is just go go go, and the mentality, and well, like you said, if you don't know anybody, if you're born in this country and you've never been out of this country, you kind of you have this viewpoint of the world as everything is a market and that everything and anything is competing against you. When in other countries, and like even in second world countries like Bosnia, there's not. Of course, there is homeless people, but not nearly as many as you'll see in Los Angeles or New York. And even then, they're treated better than as if they were to be over here. If you're homeless over here, you get treated like shit. Over there, you actually receive some sort of sympathy, and at least you get to go see a doctor.
Yeah. Like, so we have our next movie, like Upended. A recurring theme throughout the Black August Film Fest is police excessive use of force. And in less than 10 minutes, writer-director Hakima Benjamin's call in chillingly dramatizes this hot button topic. While walking home from school, an African-American adolescent named Daniel calls a friend, gushing about how he has just won a certificate of achievement and how he can't wait to share it with his proud parents. However, for no apparent reason, he's being tailed by plainclothes police in an unmarked car who harass him. Increasingly terrified, Daniel calls his nearby father, imploring him to come to the rescue. So there's that little poster there. There is a plot twist when the dad shows up in uniform, and there is an armed standoff between the uniformed father and the plainclothes white officers and civvies in this tautly directed, well-acted film, which deservedly won a Best Short Film accolade from the New Jersey Film Awards. So, one coming out of New Jersey's. Got that New Jersey thing going on.
Jersey boy.
What do you think? You think you go watch that one too? I feel like I've heard
all of these. I
the
just
director.
don't know how to get them.
Yeah, I will look in.
I love movies that speak a message.
We'll look into.
Yeah, we'll find all of them, and we might even do like reviews of them or something, depending on how that goes. But so there's
could be a show for us.
So this one, which I should find this as a soundboard item too. That guy who was like, the rent is too damn high. But so Washington 16 is a heartfelt documentary about tenants' rights struggles in Pasadena, and is another PAAFF project. The film explores the challenges facing renters in Pasadena, including high rents, gentrification, the need for rent control, and uncaring landlords. At one point, activists descend upon the posh mansion of a moneybags landlord ensconced in one of Pasadena's most upscale neighborhoods. Where demonstrators shame the brazen capitalist in front of his neighbors, a woman activist asserts poverty is a man-made condition because of greed. The screening was followed by a panel discussion with tenant advocates discussing the grim reality of the struggle to keep a roof over one's head. There's the poster for that, which I think me and Collin talked about. I think one of these, right? One of these foundations.
Not in Pasadena, but like we've talked about stories
of like
this vein.
tenant unions, right? Yeah.
Unions. or
Yeah.
like tenants having to do direct action against landlords who are purposely trying to kick them out.
Kick them out. Yes.
You know, like we've done several stories on this issue.
So next movie, African American fatherhood in Black Daddy the movie. Dr. Dame Drummer makes a moving argument against the perception that black males are absentee fathers who don't play direct roles in their children's lives. Before the screening, Drummer told the audience he objected to how African American men are depicted by the mostly Caucasian-controlled mainstream media. We always see athletes, but only 400 people can make a living playing basketball in America. Instead, Drummer, who appears in his film, wants to show the realistic side of black men. The narrative has to be in our control, not white writers, insisted Drummer, who is himself a father deeply invested in his children's well-being. In the award-winning Black Daddy, Drummer followed the lives of a few like-minded men as they told compelling stories of the joy, pain, and complexity of what it means to be a black father in America. His BAFF website states, for more info, go to blackdaddythemovie.com. I make sure you get the spelling right on that. But yes, Google might come up with some interesting search values, but I like the post. This one's good. The poster's good. Any man can father a child, but it takes a real man to raise one. Good line. But anyway, they also showcased foreign films. BAFF also screened a number of works depicting the black experience in the diaspora outside of the United States. They're in various languages with English subtitles. Cedric Isham Calvado's thoughtful award-winning documentary, Because We Come From Afar, explores the identity of France's black from various places ruled by Paris, including Martinique, Guadeloupe, and Reunion. Interviews discuss their sense of loneliness and how confusing their situation is, with one foot in and one foot forever outside of hexagonal or metropolitan France with its European mainstream. The subjects discuss what form of government they want for their homeland vis-a-vis Paris. Government options, which included autonomy and independence. The film is reflective but overly long and repetitive. It could have used some judicious editing, but is nevertheless worthwhile. So that's the director of that one right there in the poster. So he goes on to talk about Keone Wright's nonfiction, Romeo's Road, is set in Suriname, formerly Dutch Guyana, Amsterdam's former colony in South America. The title character, Romeo Kafimaga, I hope that's how you pronounce that, is descended from the Maroon people who fled slavery and preferred to live in remote, natural areas rather than be enslaved. So Romeo is currently an anti-logging activist, but during Suriname's civil war, he was trained to be a guerrilla and fought from 1986 to 1992. Interestingly, Romeo claims that Libyans helped train the commandos, which, if true, is something I have never heard before. So one of the other movies, co-written, directed Jimmy Leporel's Tresor's Black Soldier, may sound like another military-themed short, but in fact, it is an absorbing narrative scripted work featuring actors that explores racism against black in contemporary France, where the film laments your country has never evolved a place for you to belong. Jonathan Felter portrays the teenage title character, aka Hughes, a pugilist who reads Maupassant in almost half an hour. Tresor's Treasure touches upon boxing, alienation, father-son tumult. Is that the right word for that? High schools, gangs, skinheads, and more. Tresor is a 45-year-old black filmmaker born in Paris, and the auteur's Black Soldier has a Richard Wright-like vibe, and the short's line of dialogue, I am not their N-word, likewise conjures up thoughts of another Jimmy, i.e. James Baldwin. So Soldat Noir, which great fucking name for that in French. But anyway, any of those you guys want to go see?
I mean, these international ones, really intrigue me a lot. Obviously, being internationally an international black person, but like having identities in several cultures and feeling like having those identities, but not necessarily feeling like I have a home in any one of them.
Right.
Necessarily is something that I can definitely kind of relate to. And I think, like part of, I was encouraged, to be on, in this space, for the idea of like, I can think outside of the African American viewpoint at times and kind of give a perspective that is not necessarily based in America, quote unquote, that you often don't necessarily hear about.
Right.
So the idea of like feeling like I'm a citizen of the world and yet not at the same time, really resonates with me because I feel like this all the time, like
Right.
in terms of I don't feel like I don't necessarily have a home anywhere, which I think in a lot of ways is good because I just feel like in that sense a citizen of the world, which is a positive thing, but not necessarily having like a firm identity in one or maybe a couple of particular cultures that I really feel like a sense of belonging to,
Right.
which I think, just talking to my dad, over the summer is something that I should develop more. And I'm looking into ways of how I can do that in terms of like my Caribbean culture that I feel like I haven't really explored enough. But the idea of having the voices say, we don't necessarily like we are Black and like, yeah, we might belong or have citizenship in Europe, but not feeling like we necessarily belong here.
Right.
Is something I definitely resonate with.
I know with that, Black Soldier one, reminds me of heavyweight champion in the UFC right now, Francis Ngannou, who went from like French controlled, had to travel through a desert and like, then he gets to like Mozambique, which then you can like, you gotta like the last passage, you gotta row a little rubber dinghy into that country just so that you can then get like deported to France. Like, and then he was in France, like homeless, trying to like get mixed martial arts stuff. Like, so it's very similar, in my opinion, backstory there. But, there is, on August 14th, BAF screened a double feature at Friendship Pasadena Church. Maya Brown's I Am My Sister's Keeper and director Denise Dowse feature film Remember Me, the Mahalia Jackson Story, with Grammy winner Ledesi portraying the gospel singer who she also depicted in Ava DuVernay's 2014 civil rights epic Selma, and was a close friend of Dr. King, portrayed here by Columbus Short. So you did book reports on this and when you were young, Collin, right?
Yeah, Greg, I told Reef, I did in 6th grade, I did a book report on Mahalia Jackson. So that's but yeah. So
cool. So you want to watch the trailer for this one? I do have it. Sure. There's that poster, which,
I really admire Maya Angelou.
Yeah.
A lot of talented Black women in our history.
Mm-hmm. She's a great actress and other stuff too. But here we go.
Great is thy faithfulness.
Mahalia, you are the woman with the golden voice.
Really?
I mean, big time. It is an honor to meet you in person.
The pleasure's all mine, Dr. King.
Blessed quietness, holy quietness, blessed assurance in my soul. On the
There was an offer for you to perform in Las Vegas. Tell them I declined. Show ministry is to spread the good news to sinners, not to drunks. This is my calling. This is what I do. God's work.
Joshua fit the battle of Jericho.
She just like her mama. She had dreams about being a dancer. You the one who killed Charity's dream? Don't nobody want to see no nigga dancing across no stage.
Came tumbling down up to the
I want all monies up front before I perform on stage.
Yes, ma'am.
wall's hand.
It's my belief that you could play a significant role as an ally for the movement.
Coloureds ain't allowed to enter through the front door.
You mean they can pay all this money to hear me sing? As long as I hide in the kitchen when I'm through?
The walls of injustice have imprisoned our people for generations. I'm tired of sitting back and sitting still.
I'm the glue that holds this family together. And I'm the man who loves you, woman. I didn't come too far to be pushed this far back.
Jericho and the walls came tumbling down.
They'll remember me.
Damn right they will. What?
Queen.
Yeah. I mean, one of the many. So who's got popcorn? Anybody?
Seriously.
I think
Yeah,
I
I'm
have some
down.
of my- I really want to watch.
Yeah. I'll definitely find all these and we'll watch some. And there were more. There were like a whole list of them. You know, there's like 20 movies. Yeah, we should try to do that and record it and put it up on Rockfin, and you know, that way we can't get copyrighted on the YouTubes.
Right.
You know.
But yeah, I mean, Jesus, it's just like for me, I wish, and you might have some of these type of movies that are kind of more indie in scope, but some of them, you know, do become mainstream, like maybe one or two, like every couple of years. Like I remember, like I'm Not Your Negro, the James Smallwood like movie doc that came out. When did that come out? I think in 2017 or 2016,
Right.
I believe. So like, you know, you may have a few of those movies, you know, come in, you know, to mainstream, you know, but I love the idea, like, at least especially with this festival, they were very intentional of being like, we want not just highlight Black stories, but highlight how we within the diaspora have really pushed for change and been very radical about it, and in many cases unapologetic about it. And I think especially since like and again, as I said, we're talking about this shit right now, like not just within the Black community, but I think, you know, especially within the left as a whole. And I feel like watching movies like this can help inspire us to actually think of like, one, to actually learn some shit, you know, to actually kind of see like, again, like what, you know, like our ancestors did prior to us in terms of like movement making, you know. But I think also the idea of like, again, we're talking about a lot of these ideas, like I said, defunding the police as if it's a new thing. It's not. Like, and so I think for me, it just makes me more curious just to kind of see if not just them, then who others had those same discussions that we're currently having. Let's research and let's look them up. Let's see what they said about this and have those conversations. And yeah, like, you know, I think I had this conversation maybe about a couple of weeks ago about the idea of debating. Like, debating is fine, but if you're not debating in the sense of just reaching an agreement somewhere, but then the idea of like, okay, in light of us thinking through this, like, how are we going to move people towards, you know, something better? You know, if we're not doing that, then, you know, you're just being like a debate me bro, just to be like, oh, I just want to debate you just as far as, you know, defeating you. When the idea that I feel like that we should be having in terms of a debate is, what is the best path forward in terms of organization and rallying people to, you know, move, you know, in encounter with the establishment. And we're not necessarily having those. I think we are, but not necessarily in an organized way or in a more unified way. And I think watching these movies can help inspire us to kind of think about like what can be possible if we really kind of get our act together and really learn, from people who've done it and be like, okay, can we implement what they've done?
Especially
today?
that checks X balances movie. If we could implement that. But
and there's even more nuance. Like, I'm one to appreciate art as in general, but to use art as a form of expressing a certain message, and using art as a tool for activism,
right,
is something that's like complete that has not only been done for centuries, but is like entirely effective in passing down messages to next generations. I view it as an extremely important thing. I mean, if you're viewing yourself within this very bleak world, the one thing that you can do is pass down your message through art, through making these movies and expressing themselves. Like, Hollywood is fucking brain dead. Hollywood is brain dead to shit. You could watch fucking another Adam Sandler movie if you really want, but you might as well take away something from it.
I agree.